So what's the motivation for this course? In the last 3 years, I've been working in Python, doing machine learning, AI agents, LangGraph, LangChain, OpenAI SDK. And I gave 9 talks, stroke workshops on creating AI agents from scratch, as well as evaluating AI agents. But previously, up until about 2021, I was in the WordPress JavaScript arena, and I gave a lot of different talks at WordCamps, as well as talks on web components and progressive web apps, the REST API. And I've always really loved WordPress because it's a great platform to run JavaScript apps, as well as have WordPress. And it's very easy to deploy and build sites. In my time in sort of the Python JavaScript world, builds and deployments were much more involved. But with WordPress, it's very easy to get set up with a site live. I use SiteGround. But unfortunately, there didn't seem to be much about AI agents creating them in WordPress. So what I decided to do this year, at the very end of 2025 and the beginning of 2026, is kind of integrate my talks on AI agents, building them from scratch in HTML, which get deployed into different platforms. For example, I did the Brighton Web Development Meetup with AI agents in eVals for all languages. Because once one understands the basic core API of a AI agent, then it's just a matter of deploying it in your framework. And we'll see in this course how we can just deploy them in HTML pages with JavaScript doing the fetch API. So that's the motivation for this course. And as I've gone through it, I've been very pleased at what I've been able to develop, because I've been using AI assisted coding, because it's been about 3 years since I've been in WordPress. And while I understand PHP and WordPress, I've forgotten the intricacies. And actually, these days, I don't code, I review code, I learn how to make specs, and we'll cover that in the course. So that is the motivation for the course. And if we look at the repo that we will be getting, and it may be slightly different when you come to see it, but it's the one I'm working at the moment, we have our basically a section on HTML example, HTML pages, where we run OpenAI, we do tool calling, chat with memory, structured output. These we can then deploy into any framework that just renders HTML. Then when we get on to course 2 on the WordPress, we have a whole range of plugins that I just use these HTML and deploy them into basic plugins. But we also go further into WordPress scripts, how we can bundle our own JavaScript apps, which means that we can use tools like LangChain and LangGraph to basically build powerful JavaScript apps using these AI libraries and actually deploy them in WordPress using our backend. And we'll go through this a little bit more in future videos. But as I say, my motivation is that WordPress is a wonderful platform, and using APIs and all the other modern tools that it offers us, we can do just as much agentic stuff as we could do in another platform. Machine learning, etc., model evaluation isn't so easy because we're using PHP, although you could use it perhaps with some composer packages. But basically, we can run a lot of different apps. And the one example I'd probably like to give is we come in here at the very end, we have one of them, the chatter, is with our products. We've got something like phone products. I can ask it to give us some information. And what I've done in this particular one is it's a chat GPT style, but it uses both full text search and vector database search to come back with the answer. It will show us our context. It'll also show us our citations we can open up, and we can see the actual article that was used. But if you notice, for example, up here when we say foam 1 mattress strong, this mattress is described as very comfortable yet supportive. You will learn that by default they do not have memory. So if I say which one is good for support and comfort, well, could it be a chair? Could it be a bed? We're using memory, RAG search with memory, that will actually know what the context was before. It will go through thinking. And when we come up to the answer up here, for support and comfort, foam 1 mattress. So this is like debug information down here. This would be our answer. And what we do in the capstone project before we start this is build our full text search and our own custom vector database and vector search. So if I look now for phone, and I do a query for phone and I want 3 results, behind all of this are the searches. We get back this combined result summary, which we can then use to display. It's got the context. Here it's got all the context we've been used. Here it actually lists all the combined. Here it lists the full text search response of what post IDs were used, vector search response, and we'll go into detail about how this is built and how this is used. But what it means, for example, is it's found these 3 posts and these 3 vector semantic search posts that contain all the information, got the title, got the content, bundled it all together, and produces an overall context so that we can do retrieval augmented generation. And we'll explain all these things. One other thing is I've used the LangGraph library that basically has particular tools, for example, that says can detect that when we ask a question, should it use one of its pre-built tools? These will need explaining for you to get, say, a random post or category. Or if you want deep research on a subject that goes through all the posts, summarizes it, and makes a condensed report. We can build on this, but this gives the example of how we can use tools and how we can use a powerful LangGraph. So if I say something like show me category statistics, it's going to run through the graph, it's going to select it and produce our results. If I say, for example, summarize the fitness and sports category, hopefully it'll pick up my spelling. It's running now deep research among different agents. It's getting all the posts. It's working out how to summarize them. This is the deep research you might see on ChatGPT and others. It's done it. It's produced it in Markdown. It's produced a summary of all of the posts, and it's also told us which ones it used. These were just some example tools, but obviously we can build on this because what we can do is sort of add in a number of other different tools, and it can detect through the description of the tools which tool is appropriate. And we'll go into more detail with that. And so this becomes a very powerful tool where we can use LangGraph. It's a LangChain, LangGraph. They're one and the same, but slightly different libraries. How we can actually use that with our own custom knowledge in our WordPress database. And as we see, we'll go through, we've got lots of different plugins to give us templates, but the Capstone project and the LangGraph is where we actually apply it. And in particular in the Capstone project, when I come in here, this one I sort of build prompt by prompt. In the other ones, they've been made, except for the open structured output. I'll show you how I used spec programming. But in the Capstone, I'm going to build step by step by step until we eventually come to the very first, the setup of the Capstone project, the first search. Then we build into a ChatGPT. Then we build it into a ChatGPT with memory. And we'll go through all of that. And if you notice, in every one, we've got a README that goes into detail about actually how it's all working. So if I don't cover something, you can quickly refer. So if we go back to, shall we say, the plugin like Basic Agent up here, I have the explanation, and here is a detailed list. This is in Markdown. If I right click and go into Open Preview, I can see it in different form. It goes through the plugin architecture, explains what it's actually doing. And this was generated through AI, because what we also will see is we can have the client extension here that basically has a lot of free models that we can use as well as paid ones. And this is an editing tool like Cursor or Windsurf. It's a client extension that's free. You put in here and we can build, as I have done, lots of different plugins and documentation using them. You may want to use the free. I've used quite a few of them, but sometimes I find that I use the best one paid. It just pays to do that. It might be like $1 or $2 US to actually make a plugin, for example, or less. Well worth it, but you could also do it free. So there's plenty of documentation here. There's explainers on different topics like RAG, full text search, vector databases. We have our HTML examples, HTML explainers coming down here. All the plugins and all the code is here, as well as a backup using all-in-one backup and restore, so you can load in the final site straight away and have it up and running. But I also show you how to build it from scratch, how we load in the plugins, what other little WordPress plugins I might have used on my site. So there's always documentation, there's plenty of information. You will need to know, if you're doing the WordPress course, advanced WordPress or plugin development, I cover topics like REST API, Node.js. I will explain them briefly, but this is not a learning course of what WordPress does. This is how we use AI-assisted coding to build powerful plugins, to use agentic AI of RAG, vector database, tools, so multiple agents. That's the emphasis. But I will do what I can to explain each thing as we go through them. So that's the motivation. That's what the course covers. I do hope you engage in it. Bear with me. I'm not a great video presenter. I prefer speaking live with people, so I feel like a little bit like a deer in the headlights. But if you have any questions, there's plenty of documentation. And I'll also show you how to use these free coding tools to help you explain code parts of the code if you're unsure what's going on.